Hey everyone, it's Mark Ferguson with Invest for More. Welcome to another one of our videos. This one I hope is interesting to you guys. It's every house I've lived in my entire life. So we try to do some interesting videos. I did the Halloween special with my 10 scariest house flips with the houses that I didn't want to think about anymore, had horrible issues, or that just had major unknown problems come up. This one was fun to me, just to look back at every house I've lived in. Some I remember, some I don't, from when I was a kid to college, although I don't drive to Boulder where I went to college. I do show them online. And then the first houses I bought personally after college, meeting my wife, the house we bought together is a foreclosure, the house we live in now. So we show all of those, some of the details on how I bought them, what I bought them for, what I sold them for, and some other neat stories along the way. So let's get started right now. Here's the very first house I was ever born in. Well, not really. This is the house that replaced the house I was born in, because the house I was born in was a very small farmhouse that burned down a few years after my parents moved out. So I lived here for maybe 6 months of my life before they moved to another property, which we'll show you soon. But can't show you too much of this, but you can see it's kind of a 4-level that was built after the one burned down, and it's very kind of dilapidated looking. We might have to send them a Drive for Dollars letter and see if they want to sell their house. But this is actually a little tiny place called Farmer Spur, just outside of Greeley, Colorado. This is the house I lived in from like 6 months old to 3.5, and it is abandoned. I'll see if I can get some better pictures or photos of it. I'm out in the country. Whoever bought this, probably, I'm pretty sure my parents rented it, but oh, big semi. Built a modular on the land with garage and shops. None of those were there, and then just pretty much abandoned the house and left it there. But I do remember living here when I was 3. A couple things. 1, a giant snake in the basement, and 2, we had a gravel pile, and I had a Dukes of Hazzard's Hot Wheels car that I lost in that pile. That was a traumatic memory, apparently. And I had a dog named Mongo who bit some cheese out of my hand one time. He's a Newfoundland. My parents bred Newfoundlands out here. Big, giant dogs. And they got rid of Mongo after he bit my hand. I was so mad at them for that. I love that dog. So that's what I remember from here. And after this, my parents moved into town, bought a house in town, and we'll show you that one next. All right, we'll see if we can show you this a little better. Coming up, there's the modular, the manufactured home that was built. And then there, right there, is the old house that we used to live in. Pretty beat up right now. I do remember it having a basement. That's where the snake was, and it had one of those cool double closets where the closet was attached to both bedrooms. You could walk through the closet from one bedroom to the next, which I thought was pretty cool. All right, so this is the third house I ever lived in, from about when I was 3.5 to, I think it was kindergarten. It had actually a half garage when we lived there, so half of it was garage, half was a family room. It was kind of weird. I think they've changed it since then. It's been a little while since I've been in that house. But my dad was an agent during this time. I remember one summer he took off the entire summer to race bicycles. Ended up crashing and breaking some ribs and cracking his helmet in half. Good thing he had a helmet on. But after that, we didn't have a whole lot of money because he wasn't working that summer instead of riding bicycles. So we had to move to our next house. They sold this house. They did buy this house. But then we moved into a rental, which I'll show you here soon. And on this street, an agent who worked at Pro Realty, where I worked for 17 years, used to live down the street. His son Mike works there now. And then my best friend Dale used to live in that house. So a lot of good memories from this area. And then I'll kind of show you too. We'll drive down. I'm in the Lotus right now, if you're wondering which car. So this is Sherwood Park, where I played lots of tennis and baseball. And then this right here is Scott's school, where I went to elementary school. So they used to have a giant dome right there, which was super cool. and people would climb on top of it and get on top of the school. So they decided to take the dome down and put in classrooms instead. So that is the story on this house. This right here is the 4th house I lived in. So this is the house my parents rented after selling the last one we just saw. We're about, 5 blocks away from the other house, not that far, so I kept going to the same school. I always walked to school or rode my bike by myself, never a big deal. I was from 1st or 2nd grade to 5th grade I lived here, and definitely liked the other area better because I had more friends over there. Almost, I kept those same friends farther away, but it was a fine house. It worked out okay. Uh-oh, it needs a little bit of work on the back there. I don't know if you can tell. I do remember building a giant shed in the back. My parents let me do some cool stuff, like out of 2x4s and plywood, and I could climb onto the roof from that shed and then drive my Hot Wheels cars off the roof. And they never crashed as good as you think they would, but it's still a good time. So if you guys remember some of my house flips, we do a lot of flips, almost 200 right now. Last year we sold one on this same street, so I kind of talked about that in the video, house flip on the street I grew up on. And it was that one? Yes, that one right there. So that house we fixed up and sold, and I think it was that one. I don't know which one it was. One of those. So that's that house. This is the house I moved to after 5th grade. Came over here. It was actually in a different school zone, but I managed to stay in the same school. Went to middle school the next year, so my dad was kind enough to drive me to school all the time. He was an agent back then, so he had a free schedule. Been trying to do a video of this house for a while, but every time I come by, the garage is open, or the guy who lives there is out. He's an older gentleman working in his yard, and it's kind of weird doing videos of people's houses, so hopefully they're not staring at me doing a video on them. But this is a great house. Love this house. We lived here from 5th grade until me graduating high school, and then my parents built a new house after I left, went to college, and we'll show you that house now. That house was a foreclosure when my parents bought it. Really good deal. That's the first house, not the first house they bought, but one of the first houses they bought after they rented the property after almost losing their other house to foreclosure. One thing I'm going to show you real quick here. I like that house. It's a fun house, but talk about real estate values. It did back to this road, which is a pretty busy 4-lane road. And at the time, I did lose a kitten who jumped over our fence and unfortunately did not make it across the road. So here we are standing in front of Sewall Hall in Boulder, and this is where I went to college. Started out as a civil engineer, did not like all the math I was doing and did not want to do that for the rest of my life, so I switched to business. So I went from doing Calc 2 in engineering to having to do math mods and algebra in the business school. So anyway, I had a Supras in high school, so some of you know I'm a huge car nut, but I had 3 Mark III Supras, an 87, 90, and 90 turbo, and then my 90 turbo, the engine blew while I was in college, so then I ended up buying a Corvette in Florida, flew down to Florida with a one-way ticket, found a Corvette down there, drove it back, and why am I telling you this? Because the Corvette could fit under the little bar, so I just drive up, lift it up a little bit, and then I could go park for free. Now, probably wasn't supposed to do that, and I know I wasn't supposed to, but it worked out okay. So freshman year, I lived there, and then Matt was my roommate, who I knew from high school, and then Justin, who works with me now, has worked with me for 6 years now. We met at Sewall Hall, so he became my roommate, and Matt, Justin, and I lived together all 3 years in college after the dorms. So is our house not there anymore? Or am I not far enough? I'm trying to find, there it is. This is the beauty that we moved into. I don't think that giant parking lot was there before. Maybe it was, I don't know. But that house. So we lived in the second story of that house. It had a bunch of units in the back. There was a loft. And so we lived there for 1 year. I remember it gets really windy in Boulder, and that whole house would be swaying in the wind. and you can kind of see there's the back of it. It looks way nicer than it did when we lived there. And that's Boulder High School right across the street. So that was a cool house, and then we moved after that to another place. All right, so after our sophomore year, we moved to here. So this is kind of close to campus, but not super close. It's so expensive to live in Boulder, on Marine Street. And this was it's hard to tell, but a house up front and then a sixplex in the back. So 2 units on each floor, and we lived right here. So we had a little patio area. It was kind of cool. And then this is just an alley. So this is the back, and walk to school every day. So we lived here, Justin, Matt, and I, for 2 years. And ironically, this is why you keep track of your property management companies. We lived there for 1 year, paid our deposit, renewed our lease, lived there another year. When we moved out, they paid us back 2 deposits. So whatever our deposit was, $1,500 or something, we got back $3,000 minus a few things for repairs. So the property management company totally messed up, and I'm not sure if anybody ever told them about that. So that's where we lived here in Boulder. And then I did live in one other house back in Greeley after my junior year. I moved back to do some work and work for my parents for a little bit, and we'll show you that one here. All right, so this is the house I lived in for one summer after my junior year, came home to work for my parents, make some extra money, and I was able to rent this from my sister, who's a property manager, because a lot of times on these college houses, the students will rent them from August to May, and they'll be vacant during the summer. So I rented this really cheap, had a couple roommates with me who also needed short-term rental. And the reason I'm showing you this view is not because I'm lazy and forgot to take a video of it. That's not it at all. At least that's what I'm telling myself. But one, this was a house that had serious mortgage fraud committed on it. So I have a video on that, how it was sold. This is after I moved out. Had a huge, massive appraisal done on it for twice as much as it's worth. Buyer took the money, left, let it go through foreclosure. They faked leases, faked all kinds of crazy stuff on this one. Did a horrible rehab, and I have a video that goes over the whole process. But besides that, we are... Oh, look, a contractor. Need to get his number. No, this is a few years old. But I'm going to go 1 block away here. Keep going. This is 8th Avenue in Greeley right here. Some of you may be seeing something familiar soon. There's Cisneros. That's the restaurant I own now that's sitting there getting more dilapidated. So that is the restaurant I'm working on. I bought a little bit ago. But we have a ton of people interested in it for those who want an update, and we're probably going to get working on it now and just get it fixed up and then rent it. But so many people have inquired about it, about starting a new restaurant. So if you see those videos of that property, you'll see this is where the giant apartment buildings are now up. They're not built yet, but they're now up. And then over here, it's kind of cool to look back in time. This is where the other apartment buildings are now. They're not done, but they're up. So all this was torn out. Now there's giant apartments there. So that was the house I lived in for a short time. And after college, I moved back in with my parents for a very, very short period of time. All right, so this is, I think, the 6th house I ever lived in. Well, in Greeley. Lived in a couple in Boulder. But this house my parents built while I was in college. And then after college, I lived here for a couple weeks before my apartment was ready, where I was going to become the on-site manager at the Oasis Towers. So my parents built this house, lived here for a few years, and then they actually ended up moving into a foreclosure on a golf course, fixing up that property, and that's where they still live right now. This is the Oasis Tower, used to be, where it was a Ramada Hotel, a Holiday Inn. A group of investors came by, bought the property, turned it into apartments. They spent a ton of money. And my sister, who's a property manager at the time, managed the property for them. So I got the gig as on-site property manager. Still had to pay rent, but I got a break on rent and stayed here for about a year and a half, in that range. There was no grill there. There's actually a pool back there, and I took care of the pool. It was a fun little place to be. I lived on the 7th floor. There's 10 floors in number 704. Kind of a studio. Well, there's a 1-bedroom apartment. They had studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms. I had a 1 bedroom. And things have changed downtown a little bit. This hotel right here was not here. This used to be kind of the police center and a library, and they tore that down, built this hotel. And when I was here, downtown was pretty dead. It's gotten a lot better in Greeley. Things have changed a lot. And this was almost all college students when I was here. That's what my sister focused on. Now, not so much. And I think it just recently sold for $8 million. The guys who first bought it was a hotel, paid something like $800,000. Who knows how much they spent? A lot of money. Had it a few years, sold it, lost money on the deal. And the guys who bought it from them ended up doing really well and making a whole lot of money. I'll try and find those details if I can. So I moved from here into the first house I ever bought on my own. So when I lived in the Oasis Tower, that was actually a bar, the State Armory. And then here you can see the other side of the building. Had kind of a old restaurant area in front there. You can see them working on it now. But that was not open when I was there. So I had free access to the building. I could run around, walk around wherever. It's kind of cool, but it's changed a little bit since then. Here's the very first house I bought. So I bought this, I think I was 22, 2003 for $190,000. I'd looked for a long time for a house. It wasn't an amazing deal, but it was an okay deal. I actually wanted a ranch, but I saw this house, actually fell in love with it after seeing the 4-level plan. And one reason I looked at it was because it was listed at like 3,300 square feet, and the agent had actually listed it wrong. It was only like 2,500 square feet, but I still liked it. It had vaulted ceilings in the living room, pretty open floor plan, big family room with a fireplace, 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom. It was a light blue when I had it. Not like light, but kind of medium blue, so they since repainted it, but still had that same red brick. I think it had solar panels on the roof that have since been taken off. Had rose bushes right there by the basketball hoop. I put that up. And really cool house. Lived here 6 years, and we ended up selling it for $180,000. 6 years later, after I put a new carpet, painted everything, I remodeled some of the bathrooms, redid tile on those. So did quite a bit of work. Learned a lot about houses. Not a great investment. And part of the reason was I bought it right before the housing crash in Colorado, and kind of sold it right in the middle of the housing crash in Colorado. Then you know the newer track homes. But the next house I bought was a much better deal. That was a foreclosure. Made a lot of money on that one. Allowed me to buy my first rental property. But this was still a neat house. Will always hold a dear place in my heart. So I met my wife, where I had got my first dog. So neat area. All right, now we'll look at the one that replaced that house. All right, this is the second house I bought on my own. And I bought this with my wife at the foreclosure sale. So we actually found this house because my sister tried to buy that house right there as a foreclosure. She bid on the foreclosure sale, then someone else redeemed it away from her. And while we were looking at this house, we saw this house, which was obviously vacant, had a bad yard, different color back then, and it was going to sell at the foreclosure sale. So I did some research, we waited around, ended up buying it for $210,000 at the sale. Someone else tried to redeem it away from us. A junior lien can redeem in the Colorado foreclosure sale. We paid them off, kept the house, literally did almost nothing except yard work, didn't even replace the carpet. I think we painted the outside. Ended up selling it for $343,000 to Justin, who in 2013, he was my roommate in college, decided to quit the corporate world, come work for me, and help me out on my team. He still works for me now. So this was also the house that allowed me to buy my first rental property, because in 2010, I think we bought in 2009, 2010 I refinanced it, took money out, took like $50,000 out, because we got an awesome deal on it, used that money to buy my first rental in 2010 while my wife was pregnant with our twins. So perfect timing? No, but it worked out really well. Loved that house. Really wanted to try and build a loft in it because I always wanted a loft for some reason. Could not make it work because even though it has a crazy huge peak, as you can see, it's just a ranch. There's no second story. And there's tons of room up there. There are engineered trusses, and we just could not make it work to build a loft second story. So we randomly found my next house. Actually, my wife found it, which is crazy. While I was at a conference that had a loft, had a 5-car garage, had everything we wanted. So we sold this one, we bought the next one, then sold this one, and are there now still. So we'll show you that house here soon. Yes, and if you're on Instagram, you should have seen this house a number of times because I talk about it a lot as being one of the first houses that allowed me to buy my first rental. And up here, this neighborhood was nice. Cool trees, cool sidewalks, and we could walk to the pool, which was right there. So it had a pool house, tennis courts, a little playground, really nice. And that's one thing we do miss about this neighborhood, because our new neighborhood used to have a pool and it shut down. So that's the pool house, and then there's the playground, tennis courts, very neat area. Here is the house I live in now. We bought this in 2013. Actually bought it before selling the other one. And I hate to admit this, but my wife found this house. I did not find it. I was at an REO conference, foreclosure conference. I was still selling a lot of HUD homes, bank-owned foreclosures at the time. And I was in Denver. My wife texted me and said, "Hey, I found the perfect house for us." And I'm like, "Oh, great." You know, didn't really want to move at the time, didn't really think about it. And then she said it has a 5-car garage. I said, "Oh, tell me more, let's go see it." So this ended up being really the perfect house for us. I love it. I'm kind of a house snob for houses I live in, and we'll show a full video of it one day, I promise. But very open inside, has a 2-story living room, great kitchen, 5 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms. It's about 6,600 square feet if you count the basement. It's got a finished walkout basement, half-acre lot. But we bought it for $560 in 2013, which was a pretty good deal. The original owners who built it, their dad actually developed this whole subdivision. And they built a giant 22,000 square foot house on a lake, his dad did, that land backs up to our house. And his son built this house kind of at the same time. So all the materials, stuff they did was used on this house. We have 3 dishwashers, like some pretty crazy stuff. So it's a pretty cool house. Definitely not one of those McMansions. It's a, really cookie cutter on materials. But we bought it for $560. Right after buying it, like less than a year later, I was able to get a line of credit for $160,000. So basically have zero money invested into it. And it's worth, I mean, it's real hard to say. Zillow says $850 to $900, but we know Zillow's not accurate. I would say it's in that range. I would say it'd be close to $1 million if we weren't in Greeley, because Greeley has kind of a cap on houses, but it's still a very neat property. Love this house. And like I said, the garage, which I'll show you here, is one of the best parts. And I have the 928 and the Escalades on the other side, but I still don't have room for everything. So we need to get some lifts or get some more space. For the Mustang, it's at another shop we have. The Audi sits outside. So it's a nice garage, but you can always use more. So that's the last house I've had. We love it. No plans to move. It'd really have to be a crazy, amazing property to move. The only thing I'd really like to have is, like a separate shop, outbuilding to put more cars in. Otherwise, this is great. And we had to redo the deck, which was kind of expensive and a mess, but I'll show you that in the other video we do eventually. Did some other, added a playground for the kids, added some concrete sidewalk right here, took out a bunch of bushes, added that patio, but we haven't done anything too crazy. A little bit of paint, still have the same carpet, the same hardwood floors as when we bought it. I've had to replace the roof from hail, but insurance covers that. So it's been a great house. It's not cost us that much money, and really kind of the house I always dreamed of having when I was a kid. which is kind of cool. But so that's where we're at right now, and kind of an interesting, different video I thought I'd do. So hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you have any questions at all, leave them below. Always appreciate the thumbs up and all that good stuff, and subscriptions. And we'll have, of course, more videos on our flips, rentals, advice videos, all that good stuff as well. So stay tuned for more content, and we'll be back soon.